Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to be looking at War Zone Nachmund, Vigilus Alone. This is another one of the campaign books and the first one of the Warhammer seasons. As far as I'm aware, this is the first one. And it's returning back to Vigilus, which in terms of storyline is very interesting. I will be looking at that more on a personal scale, but when it comes to these reviews, I am mostly focusing on matched play elements, because that's one of the big elements towards Games Workshop. So I won't have a look at the narrative in terms of the book. That's what people can look at in their own time if they want to explore the Warhammer lore. And I won't really look at the open play stuff in terms of narrative games. I'm looking at the rules that come within the book. And I have to say, there's not as many as I thought there would be in this book. So it's very, very easy to really review this one. There are some elements that I am a little bit concerned about, but also the fact that it is, again, a bit more limited. We saw it with the Orc one and Critical Mass, which I thought at least they're sticking to one force. I'm liking a bit more where the direction is going on, but nonetheless there is still concerns. Big thank you to Games Workshop for obviously giving us a preview copy so that we can update you guys with our thoughts on these books. First things first, whenever I start a review, I usually like to give a TLDR or summary at the start, basically for people who want the cliff notes of what my thoughts are, and it just gives you an idea what's going on. So in this book, if you're looking at the match play stuff, you are really only seeing Space Marines and Adeptus Sororitas, and that is it. So a bit more simplified on that one, but are they worth it? Well, if you look at my scores here, it's looking dubious. So first thing is the data sheets for the Space Marines, and I've given them a 2 out of 10. The amount of pages that is relevant to this is 2, pictures are not included, and I hope that these go online. I know that some of the blister boxes, I don't think they come with the rules. I think it's only when you have a proper box set, so I really do hope they have the rules. And there are some changes within it that I really do like, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail later. But simply put is that they have seen a bit of a problem when it comes to the captains, and it's mainly in their war gear, and they've tried to change it. I hope that they maybe look at this in future codexes and look at this and try and make these changes, because it makes more of the different war gear more useful to characters. So I do like what they're going through for that, is making all the war gear more relevant. So yeah, I kind of like that, but it is just data sheet, so it's only going to get a small score. Then we have Army of Renown, which is the Vanguard Spearhead. This is 4 pages long. Very cool concept. I don't know many people who play the sort of Vanguard units. This is like your suppressors, your infiltrators, etc. You know, I don't know too many people use them. It's something different, but I can't give it as high a score as, say, the Speed Freaks one, because that was so different but also very, very cool. This one, when it comes to Space Marines have so many different ways to play in terms of, you know, their legions have so much support for different ones. If you are very combat heavy, you believe in the sort of vampire aesthetics, you know, they'll probably hate for me saying that. Blood Angels, then you've got the sort of Nordic Space Wolves. There is so many different ways to play that. When you compare them to it, they're a little bit more dull, to be honest. But it is something different, and it does have some rules that really favour towards it, which is quite interesting. And lastly, we have the Codex Supplement Adeptus Sororitas Order of the Bloody Rose. Now, originally I gave this a 0 out of 10 elf principle, and I'll explain that in a second, but I did upgrade it to a 1 out of 10 for the simple fact that, as a supplement, it's actually quite good in terms of they really go for the aesthetic of close combat, close quarters, and really sort of get into, you know, the face of your opponent. So for the idea of playing the Order of Bloody Rose, I thought they did a very good job. However, and it is a big however, I cannot really support this rule at all. You know, basically, within about a year, we've had a codex and 2 additional books to get the complete rule set for Adeptus Sororitas, and I am simply not happy about that. I'll go into further detail about this when it comes to the review. There is only 4 pages relevant, pictures and descriptions don't really count. In this supplement, you are getting 3 warlord traits, 3 relics, and 8 stratagems, and that really seems to be the format they're going for supplement, and I really like it. I think that is a great idea. If you'd get them all in one book, like the, you know, Chaos Space Marines, if you look at their one in their campaign book, which was just really from Psychic Awakening and from Vigilus, I don't think it's Vigilus Ablaze, then it was a sizable amount of content in one book when they combined it, even when it was just Psychic Awakening, of all the legions, different supplements, bit of rules, and it was great. if they had all the supplements, say they took all the Adeptus Sororitas, made a supplement of 3 Warlord traits, 3 relics, 8 stratagems for each of the different ways they kind of play, that would be a good supplement. But now you've divided it into 2 books and it's costing a small fortune to be able to get at 4 pages each. I really cannot support this in really any way. Simply put, if you are playing Adeptus Sororitas and you want to get the rules, and this is my honest take in terms of more feedback to Games Workshop, people are not going to spend £30 to get 4 pages of rules. It's just really not going to happen. And if you're going to get the 2 books, it's about £60–65. So yeah, I gave this a 1 out of 10 because actually for the quality of what they're trying to achieve with the Order of Bloody Rose, very good. I actually thought these were excellent. But it's 4 pages for Adeptus Sororitas in a £30 book. If you're interested in a narrative play, ultimately this book, I'd say in terms of narrative, all of them have been fantastic. If you're interested in creating a campaign and you want inspiration and rules, these are excellent. But I'm only ever looking at matched play because it is probably the most popular way I assume that many people play, and I have to give it scores based on that. So if you are playing narrative, yeah, great book. But these ones in terms of match play, there are some problems. Anyway, let's go into more detail of the actual individual sections. Looking at the Space Marine data sheets, we have 2 updated data sheets here. Only one of them is particularly relevant, to be honest, and that is the Captain Gravis Armour. So the stats are the exact same, however the weapons have changed in some of the special rules. So the Bolt Storm Gauntlet range is increased to 18 inches, I think that's quite welcome. 12 inches is always quite restrictive, though he is more of a combat heavy captain compared to the ranged one, but yeah, 18 does mean a little bit more relevant. The power sword has also changed as well. It's been reduced from master crafted power swords, reduced to a regular one, so that means the damage is now 1 instead of 2, which honestly I think is a little bit of a mistake, but maybe I was to make the power fist a little bit more relevant. Also does have Angel's Death, Rites of Battle, Iron Halo, they're all the same. But the new thing is the new Gravis fighting style. Now, when you have one of the weapons, if you have a chain sword, you get +2 attack. With the chain sword already, that really brings you to a maximum of 3. The only question of that is, when you say maximum of 3, does that mean that if you enhance the attacks in other ways, it gets discounted? I'm not entirely sure. I think they just put the max 3 because they meant the chainsword and the chainsword's ability. You only get a maximum of 3. I believe any other further ways that you do enhance your attacks are all fine. But some people might look into that and go, oh, if you enhance your attacks any other way, you're not going to get the chainsword ones from the Gravis fighting style. But that's up for debate. Then we also have the power swords. Now if you're armed with the power sword, you're getting +2 attacks, and then if you have the power fist, you get +1 attack. Now again, I think you are going to lean a wee bit towards possibly the power fist. I know it's -1 to hit, but the 2 damage and the double strength is so good. It means your wounding is easier and you're causing more damage, and more things are going to be damaged too. There is an argument to maybe say in terms of the power sword for the extra AP, and the chainsword nonetheless is still pretty good in on itself. So it really depends. The chainsword does become a much more accessible hacking through hordes. Maybe if it got the reroll 1s on top of this, then it'd be a really true contender. And if the power sword had been 2 damage, then it'd be like the power fist. The power fist will obviously still have a higher amount of to wound and most things as well. So I think it's a really good improvement. They know that when you create these characters, that they do need to maybe think about the weapons, because at the end of the day, it's not all about the points. The points don't just decide it. It's you've got to have utility as well. How does it affect relics as well? That's one thing I was thinking of. The Teeth of Terror, the chainsword upgrade one. It replaces that, so do you still count as having a chainsword when using that relic? I believe you do, so you should still get the extra 2 attacks. I mean, I think that may actually come under the way they say you get, I think, 3 extra attacks, and this is saying a maximum of 2, so maybe in that one it might be a restriction. You can see what I think on that one. There is a few complications, but the idea that they're going, yeah, we need characters with a bit more utility in terms of weapons, because at the start of 8th edition, when they reduced the captains of, like the Primaris ones to, here's this weapon, here's this loadout, and that is it, it was quite upsetting. I didn't really like it. I preferred back in like Chaos Space Marines way back when, what was it, 3.5 or whatever, where you had so many upgrades and you could really morph your Chaos Lords into wherever you wanted them to be. And I'm seeing them return to that a wee bit here, in terms of here is your captain for Space Marine Gravis Armour, here is the different weapon loadouts, and you have a bit of options. I hope to see that more often. We didn't get that with Orcs, the Mega Armour didn't really work out, it's now really down to one weapon, but you're now seeing it in the craft worlds where they've got a number of different weapon options. So maybe they have seen this and they're going, yeah, we need to make sure that our HQ choices have a little bit of agency about them, a little bit of options. Then got the Primaris Ancient, and really I think everything is the same here, bar the fact you can take the Power Sword, so that's overall that. Yeah, I like them. As said, in terms of the kits, I hope in the future they're going to go down this trend, that if they create a new HQ choice, if it's like your generic captains, or autarchs in the case of craft worlds, weapon options. We want to see options, we want to customize them. There's usually one that's probably going to be favoured more than others, but having the option is always good. And then when you look at the rules, they are trying to entice you into other ways, and that is also good. So I really think some good options and good upgrades to the Captain Gravis Armour. Come to the Regiment of Renown, which is for Space Marines, which is the Vanguard Spearhead. Now these always come with restrictions, but they also come with benefits as well. And the restrictions are all units in the army must be Phobos, Suppressor Squads, Invictor Tactical Warsuits or Impulsor, and they also cannot be Deathwatch, which in a way I kinda get. Now the benefits are all units gain Vanguard Spearhead keywords, which comes with 4 relics and 8 stratagems to use as well. Vanguard Spearhead units gain Vanguard Operations ability, Incursors and Infiltrators and Reavers gain Obsic. The special rule Vanguard Operations, that means that units never gain Chapter Tactics, which I understand, I believe that's what's happening with the Regiments Renown, but when it comes to Space Marines that feels really, really weird. It's sacrificing the individuality of the legions for this sort of universal Vanguard movement with these forwards sort of units, and I don't know if I quite like that. I've always felt that Space Marines does their individuality quite well, and this just feels a bit odd, but that could be a personal thing. Again, I don't actually play Space Marines, that's an important thing to maybe mention here. If the range attack targets a unit with this rule and the attacker is over 18 inches away, the unit is treated as being in light cover. So if you've got a bit of a distance, you are going to get a benefit of cover. And you see this more and more, a lot of the trying to push, if you are distant, you are going to get a bit of cover. And then you've got infantry that makes a normal move, and if every model in the unit moves more than 4 inches from starting location, until the end of the turn add 1 to ranged hit rolls. I quite like this, it's something very different. Forces you to keep moving, so it's going to make sometimes sitting on points a little bit more difficult. But again, it means that if you're moving, you're going to get essentially a lot of 2 up to hit with a lot of weapons, which is very, very nice. And then models can also consolidate 6 inches instead of 3, which is more of a close quarter thing. So in terms of this actually being like a Legion rule, I don't think it's the greatest. Light cover and stuff is nice, but also forcing you to forever keep mobile, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, and there's a great benefit to it, and then consolidation is fine as well. The relics that the Vanguard Spearhead have access to, we have the Knight's Blade, which is a replacement for Combat Knife or Paired Combat Blades. It's melee, strength user, AP -3 and 2 damage, but against anything bar vehicles this always wounds on a 2+. When attacking with this weapon, really good, like anything that allows you, essentially it's just ignoring the strength capabilities, you're just going straight in with 2s to wounds. Now if you enter into attacks on vehicles, not ideal. But against sort of infantry, this is going to cause quite a bit of damage. It's got great AP, and 2 damage is okay, so yeah, really, really good. Armour of Umbral, unmodified hit rolls of 1 to 3 always fail, irrespective of any abilities, which is an interesting one. Usually see that if it's wound rolls, but nope, this is hit rolls, so very, very good. Can pair up with other abilities to maybe achieve both. And then can advance and charge, which just means that very much this is more the protective side. Shadow's Touch replaces Force Sword as a melee weapon, strength +3, AP -4 and 2 damage. In the psychic phase, if this model manifests a psychic power from obstruction discipline, then until next psychic phase, attacks made by this weapon ignore invuls. Again, another great relic, I think that's very, very good for your Psychers. Not only is it good in actual damage, but when you actually power up a Psychic ability, then it's even more powerful. And then we have the Morbidus Bolts, which is a selected bolt weapon this model is equipped with. Each time this model makes a ranged attack, you can elect to fire the Morbidus Bolts, which is one attack, but if it hits then the target suffers 2 mortal wounds until the end of the turn. The target subtracts 1 to combat attrition. I think this one's okay as well. It's really if you want to target something and just instantly cause 2 mortal wounds, because wherever you attach this to is probably going to be 2+ hit if it's a character. But I think all these are fantastic relics, and I like to see when relics are all quite evenly balanced. The Nightblade is functionally very, very useful in terms of a close combat opponent, in terms of if you want to cause damage, but the Armour of Umbral is more defensive, and also with the Advance and Charge is very, very useful. So I think they're both absolutely great. The Shadow's Touch is very good for Psyker. I think it just adds that attack option. You don't ideally want Psychers to be in combat too often, but this one would allow them to hold their own pretty well. Morbius Bolts I'm not as sold on, but again, I think the 2 mortal wounds will come into its use at some points. But overall, I think they are very, very good relics. Before we get into the stratagems part, there's just a wee bit of complication. Got to explain some of the equipment. Now, this is called Tools of the Vanguard. What it does, it doesn't cost any points, but it's simply you can give a piece of equipment to one of your units, and this unlocks a stratagem for that unit. So think of it like smoke launchers is the best way. A Rhino has a smoke launcher, thus it has a stratagem option, and that goes for all the infiltrators and the incursors. So for the infiltrators, one model not equipped with a Helix Gauntlet, Infiltrator Comms Ray, or a Voxbreaker Auspex can be equipped with one Saboteur Explosive Pack. The infiltrators can also, one model not equipped with Helix Gauntlet, Infiltrator Comms Ray, or Saboteur Explosive Pack can be given a Voxbreaker Auspex. And the incursors, one model not equipped with a Haywire Mine, can be equipped with a Marksman Target Tracker. Now keep in mind, all these are, I believe, free. I don't see any points for them, but they just simply unlock a stratagem. So it's an upgrade and they get a stratagem. I believe then in that case you can really just give all of these to every single one of your units. Don't need to worry about it, just make sure you know which model has these upgrades. First stratagem we're going to look at is Storm of Death, 1 command point, used in the fight phase when a Reaver's unit is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, melee attacks against infantry or biker units, unmodified wound rules of 6, cause 1 mortal wound in addition to normal damage, maximum of 6. Very, very good. I know Reavers do get quite a few attacks. They don't quite hit the hardest in combat, or at least I don't think they still do. This is a good one for 1 command point. I know if you've got volume of attacks, get up to that 6 mortal wounds can be very, very good. So if you've got a large unit of Reavers, this could be quite handy. Last set of stratagems for the Vanguard, we have Ocular Network, which is 1 command point. Use this stratagem in the shooting phase or fight phase when you select a unit to shoot or fight. Till the end of the phase, attacks of unmodified wound rolls of 6 that target a monster or vehicle improve AP by 2, works along with combat doctrines. I think for 1 command point that's actually really, really good. It's a stratagem I wouldn't mind actually seeing in different armies. Certainly ones that have lower APs, but it's certainly one of those generic stratagems I could see working and moving into other codexes. I really quite like it. Dispersal Protocols, 2 command points, used at the end of the fight phase. One of your units can fall back as if it's the movement phase. I was a bit questionable on this one. Certainly you don't want to do it in your own turn, because if you fall back you're opening up your opponent to be able to shoot at you, or even worse, charge you as well. So not the greatest, but certainly if you were charged it allows you to get out of there. So there is reasons for doing it, and there are abilities that work alongside it, but that can be a bit tricky / expensive. I can see the use for it, but maybe a bit expensive for 2 command points, quite frankly, because you can only really use it, once a phase. It'd be one that I'd be like, 1 command point, maybe I'm being, if it was a vehicle, maybe make it 2, or if it's more than 5 models, make it 2, but 2 seems a little bit expensive, but that could just be me being a bit picky. Saboteur Explosive Pack, 1 command point, used when a unit equipped with this falls back from a vehicle, monster or building. Roll a d6, adding 3 to result if the target is a building, and on a 2 to 5 if inflict d3 wounds, on a 6 inflict d6. Another one of those, you can attach this to any unit, it's probably going to be automatically attached because it doesn't cost any points. and then gives you access that if you fall back from one of these, you can inflict a certain amount of wounds. Yeah, that is fine. I've never been a big fan of these. Spend a command point and you have a chance of causing a limited of D3 mortal wounds, but it can be a case of, yeah, it can work. So yeah, and push comes to shove, if you've got a vehicle or monster about to die, buildings, not many people are as bothered with them, then yeah, this could be quite useful. Boxbreaker Auspex, 1 command point, using the command phase and choose an enemy unit within 18 inches of a unit with this equipment. Till the start of your next turn, that unit suffers -1 to ranged attacks. When they charge, select the targeted unit and they can hold steady or sit to defend. Great ability, 1 command point, you're debuffing a unit by -1 to their ranged attacks. Fantastic. I could see this getting used quite often in armies like this, just for that alone. Also, if they do attempt to charge, then you can get your hold steady or sit to defend. But the -1's ranged attacks is one of those debuffs that you always quite like, so for 1 command point, absolutely useful. Marksman Target Tracker, 2 command points, used in the shooting phase when a unit with this equipment is selected to shoot. Oculus Bolt Carbines in that unit can ignore Lookout Sir. Now, Oculus Bolt Carbines, if I'm right, are 0 AP, 1 damage, rapid fire 1, and they're strength 4, and not the greatest thing. They ignore cover as well, could be wrong in that one. If you can get up close and put a lot of shots into a key character, yeah, this could be good, but the weapon that you're going for is just simply not the most ideal. If it was anything that was like -1 AP, then yeah, this would be really ramping up the power quite a wee bit, or any AP whatsoever. There will be occasions, maybe you've got an enemy character that really doesn't have any armour, then you're just going to unload a load of shots on them, that'll work as well. Maybe there's other abilities you can put up for it, so yeah, can be useful. Another way to sort of assassinate a character. Tactical Augury? Sure. 1 command point, used in your shooting phase when you select a unit to shoot. Until the end of the phase, that targets do not gain the benefit of cover. Ignore cover, 1 command point, useful. Pivotal Moment, this is an interesting one. 2 command points, used in your shooting phase when you select a core model to shoot. When they make a ranged attack against the enemy warlord, successful wounds inflict mortal wounds equal to the damage of the attack. Now, I don't know exactly what unit is going to be best for that, but it's a very interesting one. It's one model has to be core, and their ranged attacks become mortal when they do wounds against the enemy warlord. It's one of those ones that really represents that if the warlord has a chance to shoot at them, there's one model that just needs to inflict 1 or 2 wounds to bring them down. Maybe there is actually different models there that actually can do more damage. Yeah, it's a very, very, very interesting one. 2 command points allowed a model to essentially target the warlord. Yeah, that could be useful. I just think that this is not an army that has the best weapons to maybe fulfill that, but correct me if I'm wrong. So in terms of this one, I think it's okay. The problem is Space Marines have so many different ways to play anyway. They've got their different legions, whether it be, I know people like Blood Angels, Space Marines, and everything. They are different legions of Space Marines, and there's so different ways to play. This is kind of another one, and to me, if you're a Space Marine Blood Angels player, this has taken away a lot of what you actually want to play these specific types for. If you're playing something like Ultramarines or maybe Imperial Fists, then sure, you don't have access to as much specialist units. The Space Marines in general do have access to specialist units. They even have their own supplement codex with a huge range of different ways to play. So it feels a little bit lost in that one. It's nice to have, but on the scale of armies that probably could have done with the Regiment Renown, look at the Tyranids one, with their Breaker one, I forget what its name is. It was a fantastic addition. Now that's maybe representative of their old codex. Space Marines, I don't think they really needed this. It's nice to have, but really just not needed. Moving on to the supplement, we have the Order of the Bloody Rose for Adeptus Sororitas. So, I need to be clear on this one. These are the sort of things that make me really not like these books at all. So, just to give you an idea on it, the Codex was released in June 2021, which was £30. The Book of Fire, which was released in July 2021, was £35, with only 4 pages relevant. Now we have Vigilus Alone in January 2021, which is probably going to be £30. Reason for that is that I think the Book of Fire was £35, then they realised these books are not selling, and they reduced Octarius down to £30, and I'm going to guess they're going to keep that the same for Vigilus Alone and reduce it down to £30 as well, which means, you know, a further only 4 pages relevant again in terms of match play. That is £95, of which 65 of them is for 8 pages of direct rules. Now you could make an argument, oh, but you also get the narrative stuff, and if you're interested in that, then these are great. But I do not like match play rules in these books. It is just not good value for money. And I think the reduction of price between the first lot of books and the second lot of books really might reflect that. And we are seeing sort of changes in them. For instance, there's not actually that many match play rules in this book. You know, we only had the Datasheets, a Regiment of Renown, and 1 supplement. But ultimately, this is not good value for money. As I said here, within 1 year you've got 3 books, £95, 65 of those pounds only gets you 8 pages of direct rules. And I really don't like it. If I was to make any suggestion in terms of to Games Workshop directly, which, you know, they won't hear this, but anyway, is that you need to focus on either, and people won't agree with this one partly, is the Space Marines. When you did their supplements, they were a love letter, very interesting books on the legions themselves, have good amount of rules on them, and then the lore, it was fantastic, I really loved them. But the thing I prefer more than anything is that you went down the Psychic Awakening route with Chaos Space Marines. You had all the legions in one book, they all got an even amount of rules, and they all played into their playstyle. Well, not all of them, I don't think you got Thousand Suns, that I could be wrong in that. But either way, oh, you didn't get Death Guards, no you didn't. But either way, you got amount of these legions, they each got rules that fit their legions. You got warlord traits, ways to upgrade your warlord to be more like the characters that represent their legion. This was fantastic. If you release supplement books, and you don't need to release them within a year of the main book, you maybe can, maybe can't, maybe wait for feedback. But if you want to release a supplement, then it should be each of the legions or each of the dynasties, whichever of the ones you call, they should each have, what is this formula here? Each legions have 3 warlord traits, 3 to 4 relics, 6 stratagems, and have a book of that for each of them. Make it 20-25 quid, and everyone would buy it. You know, if they were a Adeptus Sororitas player, if they were a Space Marine player, if they're a Necron player, it allows them to go, oh, there's different ways to play each of the legions, I might be interested in playing them. Releasing them individually, now this is 2 supplements and 2 different books into all these, people aren't going to get them. They're going to pirate them, and I'm not encouraging them, don't take that away from this, absolutely not, I'm just being realistic. People are not going to spend, if they want these rules, these 4 pages in each book, they're not going to spend 30-35 quid. It's just not going to happen. But in terms of the quality of the actual ones, I really like this one in terms of the Bloody Rose, a bit more combat, a bit more violent into that side. They did a great job of writing them. I think this was really good representation for them. So let's go over the rules. Warlord traits, fiery example. Warlords melee attacks against characters add 1 to wound rolls. Each time they destroy a character model, you gain 2 miracle dice. That is awesome. If you're playing a force heavy in characters, then they're going to fear your warlord if they are getting +1 to wound every time. And then you get to add in miracle dice as well. Very cool. Incandescent Reprisal, Warlord ignores wound rolls of 5, which is cool. You know, you're not seeing many of these abilities appearing as often anymore, but it's nice that you do have access to it. And then once per phase, after an enemy shot or fights and inflicts a wound on this warlord, you can either, if not at engagement range, shoot 1 weapon and the target unit if they are eligible to. If in engagement range with the enemy unit, this unit can immediately fight. As long as they have not fought already, it can only target that unit that inflicted the wound and must be eligible to do so. That is a really good ability, especially if you're in combat. The ignore wounds alone is fine. I think Death Guard alone, they just got the 5 up ignore, but you're getting a bonus ability that essentially if you take a wound in combat, you can and the unit doesn't finish you off, you can instantly reprise back and attack them. Usually you want to attack other units that might attack you later, but still it just allows you to do a very instant reprisal, so I quite like that. I think that's quite a good ability. The first part of it is fantastic, the second part is just extra bonus. Red-handed Castigator. Each time you gain a miracle dice as a result of Vengeance ability, if this warlord destroyed any enemy units during this phase, the miracle dice becomes a 6. When this warlord was charged or made a heroic intervention, they can reroll hit rolls. Hit roll 1 I really like. Being able to change the miracle dice into 6 is good. I don't know Adeptus Sororitas HQs as much, but I know that they are strong but not crazy strong, so they're not going to be destroying entire enemy units. They might finish some off, but it's not going to be one that's going to happen all the time. So yeah, I think that one's okay. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But really the ones I sort of go to, like Fire Example if you're facing against a lot of characters, but Incandescent Reprisal I really do like.
On to the relics part and also some stratagems. So for the relics we have Mina's Wrath, which is a replacement to the Power Sword. Melee strength 2, or plus 2, AP minus 3 and 2 damage, unmodified wound rolls of 6 or mortal wounds instead. May have preferred it if it had been unmodified rolls of 6 would have been a mortal wound in addition to damage. That would have been really good. It's a little bit of an upgrade to a power sword and overall not bad. Certainly can do. Again, to the 2 damage part really does help. Armour of the True Sacrifice. User gains 2+ save. If the bearer loses a wound in a phase, at the end of the phase gain 1 miracle dice. Would really like this if I'm facing like a horde army. Now I know that orcs now really do have an access to -1 AP at least, which makes them a little bit more difficult to deal with in terms of combat to a horde. But as long as you're not fighting anything with too much damage, that allows you to get quite a bit of miracle dice and a good bit of protection, so I really quite like that as a relic. We then have Icon of the Crimson Martyr, a mid-fire model only. Add 1 to the bearer wound, gains an additional litany. Tale of the Martyr, at the end of the phase, other than morale phase, in which any friendly Order of the Bloody Rose core unit within 6 inches of the bearer are destroyed, then you gain a miracle dice in addition to any miracle dice gained in a phase which character was destroyed. Now, I'm not too familiar in terms of Adeptus Sororitas, how that one would work in terms of preferences. Is relying on you having a core unit destroyed within 6 inches. Now that is quite a lot of restrictions. It almost compares to me in my mind in terms of how the blood tally worked for you know, back when we had the Khorne faction for 7th edition, where if they lost a unit or your opponent lost a unit, you got a tally point. In this one it seems a little bit more of a restriction. You are restricted in terms of range, you have to take a relic for it, it has to be a core unit that was destroyed. So that seems like a lot of restrictions to get a miracle dice. Miracle dice are very good. So I don't know in terms of that one if that's going to be particularly good. Maybe there's going to be major ways that can pay off, but again, you have to lose a unit for it to benefit, and when you lose a unit, I really have to see either it to be easy to achieve with that losing that unit, or it better be a big addition for it. And 1 miracle dice seems a little bit much to me. But again, I'd like to know Adeptus Sororitas' view on that one. For stratagems, we've got Scourge of the Penitent, 1 or 2 command points. Use the command phase, select a Repentia Superior, and on Repentia unit within 6 inches of each other. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the Repentia's unit charge roll. 5 models or less, once a command point, otherwise 2 command points. Adding 1 to charge roll, now that does help quite a lot. I think if they've got rerolls as well, it really bumps up the chances of being able to get into combat. But if it comes down to 2 command points, if you are rolling for a 10 squads, that seems a little bit much to me just to add 1 to a charge roll. To me, I'd almost say that you have to do it in the command phase. That seems a little bit much. Maybe if it allowed you to advance and charge, along with the +1 to the charge, maybe that might be very good to warrant the 2 command points, but overall I'm a little bit, it seems a bit much for just 1 to your charge roll. Wade into the foe, 1 command point. Using the fight phase, select a warsuit unit that made a charge move. Attacks made by this unit against units with 6 models or more at the start of the phase, then attacks on an unmodified roll of 4+, score an additional hit. Really good one for 1 command point, I have to say. Just make sure that you get plenty of attacks in there. If it is a horde unit, it's going to get absolutely, even if it's a horde unit at 6 models or more, it's still going to cause quite a bit of damage. So I think that is a very good one for a warsuit one. What if that would work on the main character for Adeptus Sororitas? I forget her name off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure she's in a warsuit, so that might be quite nice on her. But even then, a unit of warsuits that get an additional hit on a 4+, that kind of reminds me of the AdMech ability when they use it for their ranged weapons, and I think they brought that down to 5+, because on a 4+, I think they auto-wounded if they scored a 4. Yeah, this might be a bit much because that means 50% of your attacks. They're probably going to hit on 4s, but not only that, they're going to generate extra attacks on top. So might be very, very good. I'm very interested, but for 1 command point, that is pretty good. Clear the flanks, which is 1 command point. Use at the start of your shooting phase. Select an enemy unit within 6 inches of a battlefield edge. That is not a player's edge. Each time you target that unit with a heavy weapon, reroll wound rolls of 1. Very interesting one, that one. It is very cheap, but also quite situational. But it does mean if your opponent moves an enemy unit too close to the edge, then they could be a real target for some heavy weapons, and reroll wound rolls of 1. That's very good. You don't often get so many reroll wounds. Well, you're beginning to get more in the game as such. But still, I really, really like that one. I think it is quite good. It's cheap, it's situational, but when it works well. I think we might see that in other codexes coming forward. Just it's one of those ones that could work in a good situation. Outrage of the Matriarch, which is 1 command point. Use in the fight phase when one of your character units fights. Each time this model attacks model with more wounds than itself, then add 1 to the attack wound rolls, unmodified wound rolls of 6, improved AP by 2. So that's an interesting one. It's only one of your character models, but it does mean they get an additional attack and they have a chance of extra AP on top. I think it's going to be a little bit situational, but then again, the add 1 to the wound rolls is very, very good. Very similar to a Custodes one, that if their toughness is greater than theirs, they can add 1 to their wound rolls, but that works for units. I like it. Anytime you get an additional add 1 to wounds, it is always very useful. And then you have the additional one of the APs of +2 if you get a 6, which is again situational, but adding 1 to wound rolls is always very useful, so I like it. Carry forth the Faithful, which is 1 or 2 command points. Use in the first battle rounds before first turn. Move a transport unit with an embarked unit its normal move range, no more than 9 inches from enemy units, etc. Can it be a Dominion unit? Retributor Repentia units, this stratagem is 2 command points, otherwise it's 1 command point. Let's face it, you are going to use it for probably Retributor Repentia unit. Maybe might use it for Battle Sister Rhino if you're planning to try and get them onto objective turn 1. You want them to sit there. They are cheap, it is going to save points, but really if you've got a Repentia unit, they want them to be fast. You could huck them up inside a Rhino, and then possibility you could get out on your first turn, might be able to get a charge off if you can get lucky enough. So there is potential there. 2 command points, maybe a bit expensive. They know exactly who's probably the target one for that one, but again, it is one, anytime you get these sort of pre-game moves, they can be very, very good. I used to do a lot with the old AdMech rules, and they realised that was maybe a little bit too good. So yeah, nice to see it here, and it is a bit restricted, but I quite like it. Fueled by Rage, which is 1 or 2 command points. Use in opponent's shooting phase when a core unit of yours is targeted. When a model is destroyed in that unit, roll a d6, then on a 4+, it can shoot with 1 ranged weapon. Retributors cost 2 command points. It depends on the size of the unit, I'd probably say in this one. If you've got plenty of heavy weapons or strong weapons, very, very good. If you don't, then it's not worth it. I think it's really going to come down to which unit that is going to benefit most from this. If you've got really, really strong ranged weapon one. I know David often uses this with, it's the standard bearer you've got with Space Marines. He uses it on Hellblasters, and it's a real pain. One of them dies, and then he rolls a 4-up or something, and then they get to fire. Sort of the equivalent of that one, but this is going to be costing you command points. So, kind of good. The problem is your opponent may then go, oh, I'm just going to stop firing on that unit. Yeah, I can see it being good, but again, situational on terms of what it's going to be best used for. But overall, I do like it, but maybe a bit expensive to do command points when something that can be countered by either not targeting, or you may just have poor rolls. Catechism of the Wrathful Defiance, I think that's how you say it. 1 or 2 command points. Use a command phase. An infantry unit in your army gains this ability, Wrathful Defiance Order. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this unit and targets this unit, then suffers -1 to 11 or more models, then this costs 2 command points. I think it's a great ability. It has to be used in your command phase, so it's not one you can, if it was in like the start of the fight phase, it would be absolutely excellent. So it's one you have to commit to, that one of your units is going to get into combat, but it just means that you have an aura of -1 to it, giving you a bit more protection. I would probably say you're more or less going to use this on 10-man squad or less, you know. And yeah, I think it's quite a good one. Very, very nice. Savage Twist, 1 command point, using the fight phase when you choose a unit to fight. Melee weapons, except close combat weapons, on unmodified wound rolls of 6 are an additional damage. Really good for one command point. Now obviously when it's saying except close combat weapons, I assume it's meaning the generic one you get for people if you're not armed with a close combat weapon, you are considered to be equipped with close combat weapon. So this is going to be your power swords, etc. Anything that isn't, if you're just using nothing, basically your fists. I think it's very good, one command point, it's cheap. If you've got throwing out a bunch of dice, which you can do, then this is going to be really, really nice for that additional damage. So I think that is a solid stratagem. Overall, when looking at the Order of Bloody Rose, I actually think it's really good. It really works into the idea of them wanting to be combat heavy, and that's what I think makes a successful supplement, is that you've got the stratagems, the relics, things for the generic force, which should work towards any of them, but a supplement that then goes, right, these ones are combat focused, so if the player is a combat focused army, they are going to enjoy this one, and I think that's really, really good. The way I look at it is I really enjoy Novuk Necrons, or I did in 8th edition. I haven't really had a chance to play them in 9th edition, and if they had a supplement that was like this, I would be delighted. So it's really cool to see it for Adeptus Sororitas. Obviously my opinions when it's saying, I don't like it that they've split the supplements into different books, that's a huge factor here, but in terms of the quality of the writing and the idea of what this force has to go for, I really like it. And that is it for my review on War Zone Nachmund's Vigilus Alone. So, the problem is, I really don't like these books. I don't think they are great value in terms of what they do for 40k, in terms of a lot of splitting up here. Adeptus Sororitas, certainly having their supplements split apart is not ideal. There is a lot of good here in terms of you're getting these Army of Renown, you've got these Codex supplements, the Datasheets, well, they've gone online, so that's not so ideal. That's well, in fact, I'd say it's more ideal. It's good that they went online, but it just feels a bit of padding on this one. Really, you just got one Army of Renown, one Codex supplement. These books are truly narrative, and they do that well. I think a lot of people like the Crusade stuff they add to it. It allows them to update in terms of ways that they can play campaigns, which is really cool. But having just these things split apart really is annoying. See if you had a book just dedicated to Adeptus Sororitas where you got all their supplements for their different factions and maybe one or two Army of Renown, every Adeptus Sororitas player would buy it. Would it be a necessary buy? Probably. But it would mean that you take the Codex, which sort of plays as your generic Adeptus Sororitas rules, and then you can get the supplement, and then it gives you different ways to really play out the faction you wanted. Do you want one that's more ranged, more into heavy weapons, more into combat? Great. But having them in these campaign books, I really disagree with quite a lot. And the Army of Renown, I like the ideas of them. I've never played them as such so far, but they are cool different ways to play, which is really appreciated. But again, I just don't like them in these books. So yeah, thanks again. Please comment, share, like and subscribe. What was your thoughts on them? Have I been a little bit more negative on them? Are the actual ideas in the books good? They're just executing them badly? Please let me know. Thanks again, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Reports.